The AK-47 is one of the most famous and widely used rifles in the world. Developed throughout the 40s and 50s, it has been used by many militaries as well as a bunch of towel-wearing terrorists hiding in sand huts. So what happens when you take one of the most legendary platforms in the world and you add a suppressor to it? Well, usually baffle strikes and making them less reliable, I think. But if you can get them to run well, then you're fitting to have yourself a good time. Boys and girls, welcome back to the channel. Today, Boys and girls, welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to go over a build that I have been having a lot of fun with recently. This is my AK-47 made by Palmetto State Armory. I've had this gun for several years now, but recently I got the work done that I needed to be able to suppress this gun. So recently I have been shooting it suppressed, and it has been an absolute blast. So in this video, I want to talk to you guys about what I've done to this gun, kind of what I like about it, and also what it took to be able to suppress it, because I'm sure some of you out there are curious about suppressing AKs, and I just want to go over some of the more common issues that you run into when trying to suppress AKs. What you guys got against PSA, huh? There's nothing wrong with these guns. Just because it sounds like a set of Legos doesn't mean it's a bad gun. Alright, so getting into the gun, this is a Palmetto State Armory GF3. I have no idea what GF3 stands for. That's just the product line that this one came from. But this is just a very basic AK pattern rifle in 7.62x39. This particular one has a 14.5-inch barrel with a pin and welded flash hider on the end. When I bought this gun, it came with this style of wood furniture all over. It had the wood grip and the wood handguard up front, but I wanted to make it a little bit more modern and a little bit more usable in realistic scenarios. So I put a Magpul grip on it, and then this handguard that I got up here, I believe the brand is Soviet Arms, that also came from Palmetto State Armory. So it's definitely more budget-minded, but that's not to say that it's bad. It's actually really nice, and I've had this handguard on here for a couple years. Shot this gun a ton with this handguard on here. Nothing's ever come loose. I've never had any problems with it, so it's been just fine. For a little bit, I did have a buffer tube adapter on the back here with a Magpul stock on it. I did like that, and it looked really cool, but there's just something about the wooden AK stock that looks really sweet with more modern furniture up front. I really dig this look. Now, earlier I made the joke that this gun sounds like a set of Legos. That's actually because the stock is loose. One of the screws that goes from the rear trunnion down into the actual wood of the stock kind of stripped itself out, so it can't really tighten down that tight, so now I have a loose wiggly stock, which I'll have to fix at some point, but for right now I've just been coping with it. It's been fine. And then up top here I have this Soviet Arms adapter that takes away the rear sight and turns it into a Picatinny rail like this. I've heard mixed reviews about these styles of adapters for AKs. So far I've not had any issues with this thing losing zero or anything like that. But that being said, I haven't exactly beat the shit out of it. I've really just shot it a bunch, and under recoil it hasn't ever come loose or had any issues. But ultimately I would say something like a rail dust cover or a dovetail mount would probably work better. This is just kind of what I had at the time, and I've never really had a reason to replace it. So for what I do with this gun, where I just come out and shoot garbage, it's been doing just fine. And then probably my favorite thing about this rifle is that it has an ALG trigger in it. These ALG AK triggers are absolutely fantastic. Now before we get into what I did to suppress this AK, gotta pay the bills.
Oh man, I love this game. You know, I've been getting a lot of calls from this guy recently. I think he's Italian. Seems to be really interested in my car though. Thing is, I think I would remember giving my number to an Italian, and I don't. Well, as it turns out, there's actually these businesses out there called data brokers. Data brokers are kind of like insurance brokers, except instead of comparing different insurance rates to find you the best one and save you some money, they just steal your information and sell it. Information like your email, your phone number, even your address. And these data brokers will sell your information to anyone. They'll sell it to companies that want to spam you with advertisements. They'll sell it to con artists who want to try to scam you out of money. And apparently, even the odd Italian. The good news is these data brokers are legally required to stop selling your information if you request it. But of course, they make this process as difficult as possible. And that is where the sponsor of today's video comes in, Aura. Aura is a service that searches all of these data brokers for your personal information, and if they find any of these data brokers selling your information, they automatically go through the process of getting these brokers to stop selling your information for you. Then they will continue to monitor these same data brokers to make sure that they don't get your information again. Aura even comes with a VPN, an antivirus, and a secure password manager to keep track of all your very professional passwords. So if you want to have some peace of mind with your digital security and make sure that your personal information is not being sold to random Italian men, then you can use my link in the description and the pinned comment to try Aura for free for 14 days. Thank you to Aura for supporting the channel.
So the day that I'm recording this video just happens to be Halloween, so I figured what better target to mag dump into than a pumpkin. Count your days, Mr. Pumpkin. Didn't realize I was in the splash zone right there. Okay, so now we've moved in onto the workbench so I can talk to you guys about the first two common issues that you run into when trying to suppress an AK. The first of which being the threads that come on the actual barrel of the AK itself. In my case, this AK from PSA has 14mm left-handed threads on the muzzle, which is a very uncommon thread in the United States. It's a very common thread for AKs, just not in the United States. So if you're ever looking at direct threading a suppressor onto an AK, that becomes a very obvious issue, is having a weird thread pitch like that. Now, I think most people these days, when they want to suppress a rifle, will do something like I have here, where they have some kind of muzzle device that interfaces directly with the suppressor. But of course, the problem there still becomes that it's got a weird thread pitch on the barrel to be able to thread muzzle devices onto. Now, when I got this AK, it came with a JMac flash hider on it that had the chemo mounting system for dead air suppressors, and I think they do that because one of the most popular cans on the market right now for AKs specifically is the Dead Air Wolverine, which is a great suppressor for AKs. But of course, I don't have any dead air cans, so I wasn't able to use that, so I ended up having a gunsmith mill out the pin and the weld on the old flash hider and spin it off. And then I got this ASR flash hider from Silencer Co. to interface with my Omega 36. However, Silencer Co. does not sell flash hiders in a 14mm left-handed thread, so I actually bought a half 28 flash hider and then had a machinist bore out the inside of the threads here and rethread it to fit this muzzle. So of course that's a ton of effort to get this flash hider to fit on this gun, and then of course I had to have it pinned and welded again so that this is a legal rifle. And that leads us into the second issue I want to talk about that you run into when trying to suppress AKs, and that is the concentricity of the muzzle threads themselves. Basically what that means is a lot of these AK barrels were not machined super accurate. Maybe they're just very cheaply made, or at the time they just didn't have the technology to make them super accurate. So the threads on the muzzle can actually be just a little bit out of line with the actual line of the bore. So when you thread your suppressor onto the end, it actually won't be perfectly in line with the muzzle of the gun, and that can lead to baffle strikes, to your bullet actually hitting the inside of the suppressor. Now, this completely depends on who made your AK, who made the barrel that's on your AK, things like that. That's not necessarily saying that all of them are this way, but it is a very common issue with the AK platform. Now, the way that most people get around this is by using suppressors that are overbored, and basically what that means is the bore of the suppressor is just a larger caliber than the bore of the projectile coming out of your AK. In this case, of course, I'm using a Silencer Co. Omega 36, which is a 36 caliber bore down the center of the suppressor, and that just gives you a little bit of wiggle room so that if your threads aren't perfectly concentric, you can still avoid a baffle strike by just having a suppressor with a larger bore. If you don't know the quality of your AK, or if your threads are concentric and you don't have access to someone like a gunsmith who might be able to check it with a bore rod, just play on the safe side and get an overboard suppressor. The Dead Air Wolverine, like I mentioned earlier, is a very popular AK suppressor. It is overboard, over 30 caliber, specifically to put on AKs to counteract that issue. So it's a great one to use. I love this Silencer Co. Omega 36. It's been awesome. I'm sure there's others out there as well that will work just fine. Well, I guess my PSA stock has finally given up. Just too much for it. Oh my god, it's literally just falling to pieces. Now, the last thing to talk about with suppressing your AK is how the back pressure of the suppressor might actually affect the way the AK runs. Now, with a standard baffle suppressor like this, my AK runs just fine. Haven't had any issues with it, and it's been running great. If I'm being honest with you, I think that's because the piston inside of the gas tube is pretty sloppy, and there's a lot of room for gas to get around it and push past it, so it doesn't create a really harsh recoil impulse that can cause malfunctions. If you have a more high quality AK with tighter tolerances, which is kind of funny because part of what makes the AK so damn reliable is the loose tolerances. Either way though, one solution for this is to use what's called a flow-through suppressor. So if we take off my 36 here, and in my back pocket, I actually happen to have my emergency suppressor I always have on me. This is a Silencer Co. Velos, which is a flow-through can, which means it doesn't capture the gas completely, and it lets it come out the end of the suppressor again. Now, I would say the best known flow-through cans on the market are definitely Huck's Works. That's kind of their whole shtick, is all of their cans are flow-through cans, but what that does is it lets gas come out the end of the suppressor instead of forcing it back down the barrel of the gun, which creates less back pressure in the gun overall. So if you're having issues with your suppressor and it's giving your AK malfunctions, you can try a flow-through suppressor. However, I am not aware of any flow-through suppressors that are overboard, like 36 caliber. This one is 30 caliber, so you might potentially run into more issues there, but this is why suppressing AKs is not the easiest thing in the world. Well, that is about all I've got for you guys in today's video. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something, and I hope this helps you get to where some of you can also suppress your own AKs so that you can also know the pleasure of having hot gas blown right up your nostrils every time you pull the trigger. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of my AK setup here. If you think it's really stupid, obviously it's super cheap and falling to pieces, but overall I actually enjoy Palmetto State Armory AKs. I think they do a great job of finding that sweet spot between being affordable but also still being reliable. But with all that being said, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.